I explore the battle of good and evil at various points in my art. There's a series, there are 10 paintings called Eclipse. And this reflects the historical battle that went on, particularly in the 1930s, where fascism and communism came together in a very distilled form, creating great evil, the biggest mass slaughter in the history of the world, and the melting down and destruction of humanity, creating the greatest pool of evil for which there is no historical parallel. There have been many, many terrible things in the world, but nothing to match the distillation of evil in fascism and in Stalinism. And what I wanted to do was I wanted to show the way that those two things, those two polar opposites, of good and evil, was played out in this particular historical period. And so what I have, there are a series of 10 paintings, and what I did was I used the different Christian symbols for the Christ and juxtaposed them with the symbols of fascism and communism. So you have the Tau cross, you have the lines of communism in this case. And again, it's a head-on struggle. The Christ is challenged but never defeated. And I use the colours here to make this very difficult conceptualization, very difficult struggle. I wanted it to be beautiful. And I use these colours because they're very sympathetic in their construction, with the greys and the gold and the blue and the white. When we come over here, this is another one of the eclipses, and you can see this is the Tau cross of Christianity, and this up here is the hammer and sickle. So reflecting the fact that although I say that Nazi and the Christ are the two biggest brands in the history of the world, I fully acknowledge that communism under Stalinism was a tremendous force of evil as well. The reason I say that Nazism is the biggest brand alongside Christ was for two reasons. It was the concentration of the concentration camps, and the fact that they built such a powerful imagery of evil. They were very, very good propagandists. And so, as a symbolization of evil, they are in a class of their own. Now, I then look at some very contemporary, very difficult issues for somebody who has the concept of God that I have. The paintings here, this painting here is to do with man-made evil. It is a representation, an abstraction of 9/11. In one of the paintings that's not hung here, the first thing I do is I show the Twin Towers with the blood red and the orange, and I created a fabled symbol of evil to represent Al-Qaeda because it hasn't got its own symbolism. The next step, though, in the destruction of 9/11 was the ashen structure. And so what I wanted to do here was there are no people because the man-made evil obliterated people. But what I wanted to do was also, again, the blue is, the Christ is challenged but not defeated. And here we have the plaster giving the ashen effect. If we come over here, you see this obviously is the Twin Towers and the large ashen form. And again, very deliberately, no people, because there were no people when it collapsed after the debacle, but also the people who perpetrated it didn't care anything about people, and their intent was an intent to dehumanize and to obliterate people. Here, this is meant to be a representation of being inside the Twin Towers, looking out. And again, what you see is this great backdrop of the black, but the blue still there. And the blue is, again, the blue of spiritualism and the blue of the sky. Now, I used to paint certain images over and over again when I was a child, and this painting is a reconstruction of one of the very first paintings I ever did. It got destroyed after my father died because it was chaos at home. This painting is an abstraction of Tremor, which is the very sandy seaside beach in town near Waterford, in Southern Ireland, where my parents were born and brought up. I was fascinated by the way that the light refracts and refracts and refracts on that skyline, if you see it. And so, because it's so sandy, and because there are pools of water in between the sands, you see horizon after horizon after horizon after horizon. You see landscape after landscape after landscape. And from a child's view, it's very, very optimistic. It lays out the whole of your life, really, because it's a very, very long perception. It goes on and on and on and on and on. It is the foothills of childhood. It's the foothills of life, because it's all full of possibility. And I was very, very struck by that as a child. Now, I've used Cornish sand, because Cornish sand is very fine sand, to add depth and extend the perspective. I wanted the sand to mirror the sand of Tremor, but also what I wanted to do was to take your eye up and through and up and through, and to use the sand as well to continue the story right up to the top of the frame, where it blends into the skyline. So that is a reconstruction of that childhood painting.